event. And we are very honored to have the presence of Director General of ILO, Mr. Gilbert Humbo, and also we have the presence of Under Secretary General Guy Ryder and my colleagues from IOM, UNHCR, and OECHR, all are here. So we thought that taking advantage of the presence, we would have a very crisp, short discussion on the labor rights in Bangladesh, what we are doing in Bangladesh. I think that will be conducted by one of our honorable advisors who is in charge of the international relations. He is going to conduct that. But before that, let me tell you that ever since Bangladesh's independence in 1971, we have gone through ups and downs in our national lives. We have had stability followed by instability, and then sometimes misrule, and sometimes there were endeavors to bring back to good governance, and that did not work, and maybe sometimes we had a slide back into unstable situations. So after all these things, after all types of experimentation, finally there has been a revolution. You know about that in Bangladesh, which took place last July in 2024, and we are now in a process of transforming the entire country. And the government is being led by Professor Yunus. The people has asked him to form the government. He is heading the interim government, and Professor Yunus, being the dreamer of 3 zeros, as you know, he is very well known, and he places the rights of the workers and decent work and their decent conditions, worker safety, their bargaining powers, and this is in his agenda. So the government has started working on it. So we will have a discussion on it. I'm inviting Advisor Lutfi Siddiqui to come to the stage and conduct the session on the labor rights and developments in Bangladesh. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Hello again. So this has been an intense week for all of you, and so I thought rather than... Actually, where is the roving mic? There it is. Okay, here it is. So rather than have a presentation or a prepared speech, I thought we'll have a presentation. And I want to recognize Mr. Gilbert, that had violence over there. There was no police because the police had fled. There was some military presence, but they had limited authority. And there was a lot of clamor, particularly from the employers, for us to try and use force and quell the unrest. And presumably we'll make an exception for you.
No, not at all, the talk. Before I start, I really want to recognize USD Guy Ryder. April 24, 2013, when we had the Rana Plaza, I was his deputy when he was Director General of ILO, and he's the one who sent me to Dhaka, and that has been the beginning of my love story with Dhaka and the government sector in the country. Of course, that's 12 years have passed. And I want to fast forward, let alone all that the country has done, all ILO has been trying to do. You mentioned the inspection, you mentioned the labor law, you mentioned the social dialogue, the better work, and etc. And I wanted to focus in the last 2 years. And I remember the first time that I had the opportunity to meet up with you in ILO offices in Geneva. It is true that in ILO we do have what we consider a case against Bangladesh that is still in the process. What I wanted to highlight is how determined the current team, current government has been, and how open-minded, trying to recognize the issue and address the issue as you just explained it. For us in the office, as well as when I look at the way our supervisory machinery works, it is a huge difference when a member state comes up front, recognize the challenges, and then together we work the way out. This is what I really hope. I know we will continue on that, but I also hope that you will pass that on when you also pass it on, to have this open-mindedness. ILO does not expect all the problems to be solved overnight, but ILO does expect to have an open discussion, recognizing what are the issues and what could be the way forward. It's very clear to us that when I was in Bangladesh in 2013, I was saying, I believe the population, I'm going by memory, the population by then was like 130 million. And for a population of 130 million, and just the government sector itself was 4 million workers. And the whole country had 56 inspectors for a country of 130 million. How can you really inspect with that? Today, I know we talk about more than 500. I don't have the latest statistical data, and you are also in the recruitment processes, etc. I'm very glad and I remember again also when we organized, trying to see that ILO, we are not there to be in a punishing mode. I remember we organized a mission. There have been one tough discussion between the German Minister of Trade or Secretary d'Etat coming from Bangladesh. This is why I remain very convinced that as soon as we can speed up addressing the challenges that you mentioned, it's not automatic that the production can just flee from Bangladesh because of the quality of the production as we know it on that. And that we keep improving. I'm saying this a way to encourage us to really looking at the reform of the labor law, as you mentioned. And we have to be mindful that it has been creating a credibility issue, because the reform of the labor law, we have been talking about it for 12 years on that. So it's important now that we really move in on that, and once for all, keeping the objective that we set ourselves, the condition to create a trade union, the social dialogue, and all of that. And you know that ILO, both through our office in Dhaka, in our regional office in Bangkok, in Geneva, I couldn't wait the day our supervisory mechanism will really govern that we're closing the case. And I know Professor Yunis, the whole government, you really want this case to be closed. And you can count on us also that we want to work with you to make sure that we get there. And please continue to see in ILO a partner. Thank you so much.
Site of a ready-made garment factory. It's called the the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory. In 1911 it burnt down, killed 146 workers, nearly all of them young women, and the reaction to that tragedy actually created the impetus to worker protection legislation in this city and in this country. So the Bangladesh story, to that extent, is also the United States story. And we should be very conscious of the universal nature of some of the issues we're dealing with. When 102 years after the Triangle fire, the Rana Plaza factory collapsed, killing 10 times as many workers, most of them young women, the international community, and Gilbert Ongbo was the first international official on the spot, reacted. I think reacted with commendable speed and commendable solidarity, because I'm sure many of our Bangladeshi colleagues here remember the immediate aftermath of Rana Plaza. The move from the business community, the brands that have just been mentioned, was for our reputations, we have to leave Bangladesh. We have to get out and relocate. And we had a very interesting process of reflection. And the international community, and I'm going to define what I mean by the international community, decided that the only responsible course of action was to sustain the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh, because we knew, and everybody knew, that that industry was the dynamo of Bangladesh's development processes, and a remarkable success story, providing livelihoods, particularly for young women. So it wasn't a question, we hoped, of the brands getting out of Bangladesh, but of improving and transforming the situation in the country. And that is why the action program we put together was entitled a Sustainability Compact, because the idea was to sustain the ready-made garment industry in Bangladesh. How did we do it? Well, we worked with the government. Sometimes there were positive experiences, sometimes there were less positive experiences. We worked with the Bangladesh employers community, BGMEA, the BKMEA, the BEF, all of them. Again, a lot of actors. But crucially, we worked with the brands, those companies in Europe, in North America, who sourced production in Bangladesh, but didn't really take as much responsibility as they should have done for the conditions in which those goods were produced. And then something unprecedented happened. An international compact was written whereby the international brands, the household names you will see selling clothes in these high streets, took legal responsibility for assuring the structural safety of garment factories in Bangladesh, many of which were residential buildings, many of which were not designed and fit for industrial production. And they financed both the surveying of the structural safety of those buildings, and where remedial action was necessary, they paid for it. Nothing like that has ever happened anywhere before, or to my knowledge, since. That was the core of the international community's reaction, and I think it went a long way to assuring the continuity and the sustainability of the garment industry in Bangladesh. But there were other areas, you mentioned them, changing laws which were not in conformity with ILO standards, also doing training, getting employers and workers used to speaking to each other, which was not in the culture of the industry, and I think has improved a great deal. There are challenges ahead, but there's an awful lot to be proud of in what's been achieved. Thank you.
2009. And finally, the interim government has got its grip on it, and it's now at its final stage. So we hope that we'll be leaving behind that ordinance for the future government to honor, respect, and ensure that it is used. We are, in addition to that, for the first time, we're enacting the domestic violence law, and here again we're at the final stage of it. It's under process, long overdue, much needed, as this audience would well appreciate. Beyond that, I would also like to mention the government being very sensitive to the issues of women development and their conditions in labor, what Lutfi has already mentioned. So work conditions, violence in work conditions, all of this will be defined in that ordinance. And the other point I'd like to make is that we are also at a fairly evolved stage of seeking an independent women's commission, which would be very useful for us to have there to guide the future governments and move us through the reforms that we are making today. I guess I could stay with that.
And it's really a challenging job for all the governments to tackle the whole situation, even whether it is an incoming government or the past government. Recently, when the revolution took place, it was very difficult for the government to tackle the whole situation. But I must thank the government and the chief advisor that he took the initiative to take all the necessary actions to handle the situation properly. And the political parties also cooperated with that. We also had been to the places, visited the factories. And we must appreciate the legal situation, which I think the law advisors just told me that they have many improvements on that issue also. But I assure you one thing, if the election is held properly, then things will definitely improve. The rights of the people will be established, and there will be some sort of a law and all the situation will establish properly. I believe that in Bangladesh things happen, but at the same time they are also they take the necessary actions also to overcome the situation. And the labor rights we always support, but at the same time we must, what Asim will say, that we must also again look after the prices which we get, the producers get, should also be listened to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Export system we are competing very unevenly with many countries because the buyers, the mentality is that they want to keep as less price as possible. So, but it's a really big threat for Bangladesh that the prices of the accessories which we need to import from our side, these prices are going high, and the buyers used to give less price to the governments bringing from Bangladesh. So I think this should be dealt very proportionately and with justice. If there is no incentive for the laborers, they lose the efficiency gradually. So this is my points to consider. And because the political stakes in our country, everybody we are attached to this. Many of our party members also has this business. We can assure you that what is the problem, we will be there to support the government's industry and our government and the buyer as well. So this is my major points to increase the reasonable price, and the labor should get more incentive from the industry owners. There should be justice and balance between all these areas. Thank you very much.
They pay their wages, their workers, 50% more in wages, and they make more profits in that country. What happens in our country? Where does the profit go? Where is the leakage? Is it logistics? Is it bribery? I don't know where it is. We have to look at corruption. We have to look at the system as a whole. We cannot keep on pushing it back on the buyers and say the populist thing, that this is all about cost pressure. So let's get that balance in perspective. And next, it's...
Well, the last couple of days have been ones of reflection. We've spoken to businesses, we've spoken to industries, and it's refreshing to see the reforms that we've we've talked about, and some of them have been implemented in the labor sector. And when we were speaking about Rana Plaza, it takes me back because that's a very personal experience that shapes my politics. It's been 12 years since the Rana Plaza collapse happened, and I was a medical student at Dhaka Medical College back then. And I remember that day like it was yesterday. We had hundreds of patients coming in, and as medical students, of course, we tried to help as we could, trying to volunteer, helping families locate blood, helping families navigate around the hospital. And it was heartbreaking to see the kind of injuries that happened. I still remember this little girl, the daughter of a worker who suffered from crush injuries. So basically, the building collapsed on top of her, and her kidneys had failed. And we were trying to take her to dialysis, and I remember that girl telling me that my mother would like some home-cooked rice. Of course, she wasn't allowed to eat at that time, and I said, when she's allowed, I'll bring home-cooked food. Rupaliappa didn't survive, but I had worked with many others who did survive, but we couldn't rehabilitate them as we should have. But why I say this is, I think, for too long we talk about investment, we talk about jobs, but we probably don't talk enough about the kind of jobs that gets created through those investments. Of course, it's about wages, but it's about much more. It's about human dignity. Does it really ensure that these people will have rest, will have security, will have stability? Will those jobs guarantee sure that these people are also taken care of? What's the framework? And I'm sure there's huge experience around the room. So those are the two things I think. So one is how to ensure economic dignity in this evolving economy, and how do we make sure that workers in our informal sector are also taken care of. Thank you.
Party, Foreign Affairs Advisor to Mr. Tariq Rahman, the acting chairperson of the party. Now, labour rights. I've banged on, we've banged on in the opposition for 15 years, whether it's with the EU or whether it's with the US, that in a country the last 15 years where there is deficit at a macro level on human rights, at a micro level it was difficult to get workers' rights right. The workplace rights were very difficult to achieve. When you have a rogue government, that kind of government we had in the last 15 years, it was difficult to get any legislation to any kind of discussion on workers' rights, etc. The EU tried many times to get the Workers' Compact done, but it's not possible when you have a government that is hell-bent on diminishing people's rights at every sphere of public life. Of the interim government of His Excellency Dr. Yunus for turning the page post 5th August. We now have a chance to redraft our public life again, which the interim government has started to do. They've introduced many good reforms, which we hope to continue, and we also like to institutionalize human rights in day-to-day governance by probably, we're looking at going with the idea of having a law, justice, and human rights ministry. So in terms of human rights, will continue to play an important role. It should just not be engraved in an institutional signboard, but legislative legitimacy on human rights must be there. Political leaders must support that sort of initiation. So we hope together the many good reforms that you continue, sir, with your government, we hope to take and continue those, and together we are hopeful that we can build a better Bangladesh for all of us. Thank you.
First of all, thank you for having me, and it was wonderful to hear a little bit earlier about just the direction of travel and the progress being made on labor rights and reform in Bangladesh. I have every confidence that there is going to be such significant progress. So it's just been a great thing to be part of the dialogue. So on the one hand, we're a U.S. 501c3 foundation and organization, and we're talking about Bangladesh. On the other hand, there's nothing more relevant, because as you talk about the strength of Bangladesh, the power of Bangladesh, the impact of Bangladesh on the world, I think we are one no longer small example of the influence and the ability to take a model, a belief of how to move people up and out of poverty in what was then one of the poorer countries in the world, and people asked with a lot of skepticism, how could that possibly work in the richest country, you know, technically in the world, in the richest city, in a little place in Queens, New York, just 2 subway stops from Wall Street. I mean, how can this possibly work with $1,200 of capital in the United States? And as Professor Yunus said, you know, here we are. Since 2008, in 2025, we went from, you know, a few little loans to serving almost 250,000 women entrepreneurs in the United States. We have given out $6.2 billion of U.S. loan capital. With 99.8% of these loans have been repaid. So this is non-recourse, non-collateralized loans, and the alchemy and the magic is no different than the model that we replicated and studied very hard, which was trust, like community, social capital, and trust. And that works the same all over the world, and it's working very well here in the United States. So we are hugely grateful. You know, people said, what does Grameen mean? And as we told them, this is truly not just the Village Bank, but this is really the bank for the poor in the United States. And if we've grown to a place that we are the largest and fastest growing microfinance organization in a developed country in the United States. And every day now, we have 200 plus entrepreneurs joining the program, getting access to capital that the formal banks and the formal system does not serve. So in the global desire of all of our nations to reduce income inequality, to have equitable access to capital as the pathway to economic growth in every nation, we think that there are many aspects, but this pillar is super important in the United States. And thanks to really Bangladesh, thanks to the Grameen model, thanks to the council and the vision of the Honorable Chief Advisor, then also at that point, the founder really of Grameen here in the United States, we are trying to do our small but larger and larger part in solving these issues right here. Miles. So now we are in 41 locations around the United States. We just opened 5 in 2025. It is 22 cities, 15 states, and this is a number that we plan to triple now by 2033. So, when I came to the organization, we, from a philanthropic point of view, had raised $4.8 million that year. In 2024, we were able, because of the strength of the model, to raise $248 million of support from large institutions, foundations, banks. So it's an interesting and very powerful and proud moment, really based on their belief that we can be as powerful as the Grameen Bank has been in terms of size and reach and scale in a country like this. I think people thought it couldn't be done, but we're very grateful and thought that many of you would be proud to know of the impact right here in this backyard, and hopefully doubling that impact as we go. We took 10 years to give out $1 billion. The last $1 billion was 238 days. And so that's the speed of scale and impact in the U.S. So, yes, then the last thing I would say, because I think one of the things that has always been our goal was to be able to be self-funded. Even though we are thrilled that we have so many supporters, both with philanthropic capital as well as debt capital, but our goal was to become a true social business. And we had a goal of doing that in 2020. And 2020, the pandemic hit, and we made the distinct, deliberate decision to forgive many of the loans to our members who had all their businesses closed. So the next year, not only did we hit sustainability, but this year, in terms of excess, again, at surplus, we will have a profit in this organization of $17 plus million US, plan to have about $150 million of excess surplus generated from the program itself to more than cover it, so it's 158% sustainable, which is truly the definition of a social business, and every dollar just goes back into the program to fund more cities and more members. So that economic flywheel allows us to be not just sustainable, but to have lasting scale and to be able to grow. And right now in the United States, there are a lot of other organizations that are challenged. If they were dependent on government money, a lot of that has been challenged at this moment. If they're dependent on philanthropy, philanthropy is uncertain right now. So to have that kind of reliance, self-reliance as a social business allows us to be in the strongest financial position to ensure that our members can continue to count on us. So that is, I think one of the final goals that we have that we continue to meet, which makes us unique in the microfinance world here in the U.S. So thank you very much. And